Learn English through story. The hidden kiss of desire. In a quaint town nestled between rolling hills and surrounded by a forest of towering pines, there lived a woman named Amelia. She was known throughout the town for her grace and beauty, but even more so for her sense of duty. Her life was orderly, measured, and controlled. Every day was a repetition of the one before, tending to her flower shop, visiting her ailing mother, and quietly attending social gatherings that her position required. Amelia was admired and respected, but she was also envied, for she seemed to have everything except, perhaps, what she secretly craved the most. Beneath the mask of a perfect life, Amelia carried a secret. She longed for something more, something dangerous and forbidden, something that would break the monotony of her carefully constructed world. But she kept this desire buried deep within her, locked away where no one could see. It was a hidden part of herself that even she tried to ignore, though it stirred in her heart every time she closed her eyes. One rainy evening, as Amelia was closing her shop, a stranger walked in. He was tall, with dark hair that curled at his neck, and eyes so blue they seemed to pierce through the shadows of the dimly lit room. His clothes were worn, but his presence was magnetic, as though he carried the weight of 1,000 untold stories. Amelia felt her heart skip a beat as he approached the counter. "Are you still open?" he asked, his voice deep and smooth. She hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Yes, of course. How can I help you?" The stranger looked around the shop, his gaze lingering on the rows of flowers before settling on her. "I'm looking for something special, a flower that speaks of desire but hides it well." Amelia felt a shiver run down her spine. His words struck a chord in her, as though he had glimpsed into her soul and found a secret she kept hidden. She cleared her throat and smiled, trying to shake off the strange feeling. "I think I might have just the thing," she said, turning to a bouquet of deep red roses, their petals edged with black. "These roses are rare. They bloom only once a year, and their beauty is deceptive." The man smiled, a slow, knowing smile that made her pulse quicken. "Perfect," he said, reaching out to take the bouquet. "But I wonder, do you believe in what they represent? That beneath beauty, there is always something more, something darker, something that stirs in the shadows?" Amelia felt her breath catch in her throat. There was something about this man, something about the way he spoke, that unsettled her. Yet, at the same time, she couldn't deny the thrill that coursed through her veins. "I suppose," she said carefully, "everyone has a hidden side." The man's eyes darkened, and he leaned in closer. "What is yours?" For a moment, Amelia was speechless. No one had ever dared to ask her such a question, and certainly not so boldly. She wanted to pull away, to send this stranger out of her shop and out of her life. But instead, she found herself drawn to him, as though he had awakened something deep inside her, something she had tried to bury for years. "I don't know what you mean," she said, her voice a little too breathless. The man chuckled softly. "Oh, I think you do. But that's the beauty of it, isn't it? Desire is always hidden, even from ourselves. It's a dangerous thing, when left to fester." Before Amelia could respond, he turned and walked out of the shop, leaving her standing there, her heart racing, her mind whirling. She had never met anyone like him before, and the encounter left her feeling unsettled in a way she couldn't quite explain. That night, as she lay in bed, her mind kept drifting back to the stranger and his cryptic words. Who was he? What had he meant by his talk of hidden desires? She tried to shake it off, telling herself it was just a momentary lapse in judgment, a fleeting attraction to a mysterious stranger, but deep down, she knew it was more than that. His words had stirred something within her, a longing, a hunger that she had kept hidden for too long. Days passed, and Amelia couldn't stop thinking about him. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, heard his voice. She found herself daydreaming, imagining what it would be like to give in to her hidden desires, to let go of the control she had clung to for so long. But with each passing day, the weight of her responsibilities and her reputation held her back. It wasn't until a week later, when the stranger returned to her shop, that Amelia's resolve truly began to waver. This time, he didn't ask for flowers. He simply stood in the doorway, his eyes locking onto hers, and said, "Come with me." Amelia's heart raced. She wanted to say no, to refuse him, to close the door on this dangerous temptation, but instead, she found herself nodding, her feet moving toward him as though she were under a spell. She didn't know why she was doing this, why she was throwing caution to the wind, but in that moment, all she could think about was the thrill of the unknown. The stranger led her through the rain-soaked streets, past the familiar buildings of her town, and into the forest that bordered its edge. They walked in silence, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the damp earth beneath them. Amelia's heart pounded in her chest, her mind racing with 1,000 questions. Where was he taking her? Why had she agreed to come? But even as her mind screamed at her to turn back, her body moved forward, driven by a desire she could no longer deny. They stopped at a clearing deep within the forest, where an old, crumbling stone building stood. It looked like it had once been a chapel, long abandoned and overtaken by the forest. Vines crept up its walls, and the stained glass windows were cracked and covered in moss. The stranger turned to her, his eyes dark and intense. "This is where I come when I want to escape," he said, his voice low. "When I want to let go of the world and embrace what's hidden inside." Amelia swallowed hard, her pulse quickening. She knew what he was offering, an escape from her life, from the carefully controlled world she had built around herself. He was offering her a chance to embrace her hidden desires, to give into the temptation that had been gnawing at her for so long. And for a moment, she wanted nothing more than to say yes. The stranger stepped closer, his hand reaching out to touch her cheek. His touch was gentle, but it sent a shock of electricity through her body. "You don't have to hide anymore, Amelia," he whispered. "You can be who you really are. You can let go." His words wrapped around her like a spell, and she felt herself leaning into him, her body yearning for the release he promised. But just as their lips were about to meet, something deep inside her snapped. A voice, quiet but firm, echoed in her mind. "This is not who you are." Amelia pulled away, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "I can't. This isn't right." The stranger frowned, his eyes narrowing. "Why not? Isn't this what you want?" Amelia stepped back, her heart pounding. "I thought it was, but it's not." I've spent so long hiding from myself, convincing myself that desire was something dangerous, something I had to keep locked away. But now I see. Giving into it like this won't make me free, it will only trap me further. The stranger's expression darkened, and for the first time, Amelia saw a flash of something cruel in his eyes. "You're a fool," he hissed. "Do you think you can go back to your old life? Do you think you can pretend this part of you doesn't exist?" Amelia stood tall, her fear melting away as she met his gaze. "I'm not pretending," she said, her voice steady. "I'm choosing. Desire isn't something to be feared, but it's not something to be given into recklessly either. It's part of me, but it doesn't control me, I control it." The stranger's eyes blazed with anger, but he said nothing. Instead, he turned and disappeared into the shadows of the forest, leaving Amelia standing alone in the clearing. For a long time, she stood there, her heart racing, her mind reeling from what had just happened. But as the rain began to fall, washing away the remnants of the encounter, Amelia felt a sense of clarity she hadn't known before. She had come face to face with her hidden desires, and she had made the choice to embrace them on her own terms, not on someone else's. When she returned to her shop the next day, Amelia felt different. The weight she had carried for so long of the fear of losing control, the fear of giving into her hidden desire was gone. She no longer felt the need to hide who she was, but she also knew that desire, like any powerful force, had to be handled with care. In the weeks that followed, Amelia began to make changes in her life. She allowed herself to pursue the things that brought her joy: art, music, new friendships, without the fear of judgment or failure. But she also learned to set boundaries, to recognize when something was too much, when it was taking her down a path she didn't want to go. Desire, she realized, was not inherently dangerous. It was only dangerous when left unchecked, when it became a force that controlled rather than inspired. And the key to mastering it was not to deny it, but to understand it, to know when to indulge, and when to walk away. And so, Amelia's life became fuller, richer, more vibrant. She was no longer the perfect, controlled woman the town had once known, but she was happier for it. She had found a balance between the hidden and the revealed, between desire and restraint, and in that balance, she had found herself. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you enjoyed, then please like and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching.